We're delighted to be partnering with Science Week again this year on the Two Johnnies podcast. Science Week 2022 will be taking place this week. That's the 13th to the 20th of November. And this year's themes are around infinite possibilities. We wanted to explore what the possibilities around deepfakes are. So we're joined by an expert in that area, Henry
Ajder.
I've got it. Welcome to the Two Johnnies podcast. What? The intro was going so well.
It was going well. You got it though. You got there.
Yeah, I got there in the end.
Henry, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, man. Yeah, very good. It's lovely to be in Dublin and excited to talk to you about this sometimes scary, often exciting, always strange technology.
Before we go on, how much did you pay for a pint in Temple Bar?
I think it was €7.80 for a pint of Guinness.
That's more dangerous than any deepfakes.
Yeah. No, that was criminal.
They've got you. Bloody Temple Bar.
Okay, so deepfake and synthetic media. So what's your qualification or what?
So I've been working on the topic of, I guess, how deepfakes and synthetic media impact society for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And so I've been tracking how they've evolved, how they've been kind of manifesting in society, who they've been impacting, how they're being used.
So do you come from like a computer science background or what is it?
No, so my background's actually in philosophy.
Okay,
so I'm looking at how, I guess, disruptive technologies are changing the way we need to kind of think about society and values, ethics and things like this.
Yes.
There could be somebody listening who's like, what's a deep fake? So what is a deep fake?
It's a really good question.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a tricky one. So deepfakes first emerged in late 2017 in a really quite pernicious, quite unpleasant way, which was people using a piece of artificial intelligence to swap women's faces, specifically celebrities, into pornographic footage without consent. So this was a form of digital sexual violence, essentially. And these algorithms are now being used in lots of different ways where they can take training data, that is images, audio of someone's voice, and then it can recreate them with a hyper-realistic level of realism.
Can I say you have a very relaxing voice as well?
Thank you.
I'm getting ASMR.
Yeah, I was going to
So
say,
chilled.
Two Johnnies ASMR, that's what you want.
Just keep talking, man.
So somebody could go on the internet, get a random porno film, and then take whoever, Beyonce, and put her face on it. And it would look relatively real.
Yeah, so when it first started, the technology was quite crude. But it doesn't have to be high fidelity to cause harm, right?
Yeah,
and to
true.
embarrass and to traumatize a victim. But now we are seeing the technology becoming much more realistic, much more accessible, right? I'm not a computer scientist, but these tools for swapping faces in comedic ways are becoming as easy as just pressing a button on your phone. So because it's becoming so accessible, it means that more and more everyday people are also being targeted in the malicious uses.
How's it been done at the moment? Like, do you need a laptop and a load of software, or is it yet available on a phone to quickly superimpose Johnny Smacks's face onto a cat or something?
So again, originally it would have required like a really powerful gaming PC, something that, you'd run some...
And knowledge of the software.
Exactly. But now people are creating really user-friendly tools, which, as you said, you can access on your phone. You may not get the highest quality results, but it will be good enough to be like, oh, wow, that's Johnny's face on a cat.
Yeah, which is probably not that realistic as deepfakes go. Like, I guess there can be a lot of fun, like Johnny said there, my head and a cat, we'll all have a bit of a giggle, and then they can be sinister as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So as mentioned, of course, this use of it as a form of digital sexual abuse against women is the biggest problem with deepfakes at the moment. But also there's a lot of concerns around disinformation. So obviously the world is quite turbulent right now politically, if I hadn't noticed.
To say the least.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's a lot of fear of politicians being targeted, their voices potentially being cloned to say things they never said, or to put them in scenarios where there's a video that leaks of them where they, haven't been, which is incriminating or defamatory, which could, potentially swing an election.
Yeah.
We saw, for example, a deepfake of the Ukrainian president Zelensky hacked onto a Ukrainian news channel telling his troops to surrender. It wasn't right. It wasn't the highest quality again, and the Ukrainian government had warned that Russia were going to, or someone would try and do
the other
it.
people,
right? Exactly.
They're probably listening.
I say that because we don't know for certain who it was, but you can imagine who they're sympathetic to. But that wasn't that sophisticated, but it was a warning of what's to come because the technology is not getting worse.
Yeah,
it's
only going to get better.
Use.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
So did they have to take original footage of Zelensky, or did they take somebody who looks kind of like him put a same color T-shirt on, or like how much of it does it have to be real, and how much of it can you do through software?
Sure. So the way it was probably made was they found someone who was like a bit of a body double to him.
Yeah.
So someone who had a rough approximate build.
Same skin color.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then they will generate this synthetic output, which is specifically swapping the facial region. One of the key signs that it was fake was that the head shape was wrong of the person whose face was replaced with Zelensky's.
Okay.
So there are telltale signs, but again, at the moment we're talking about swapping faces.
Yeah.
But in the future, it may be generating entire people, not just the face.
So if they had gotten a better lookalike, it would have been more believable.
Potentially, it would have been harder to
differentiate.
Yeah. I think, it still wasn't the highest quality. For example, one of the challenges at the moment, particularly with swapping faces, is kind of the side profile. So if I turn my head, and then also mess up the audio and do so, then the kind of mapping of the face gets blurred and sometimes glitches on the sides of the face.
Yeah, but you can imagine if someone was able to do this and, send it to your grandparents. Oh, I'm stuck. I need 100 quid. They might be in an area where low internet bitrate.
Yeah, well, they're probably not as clued on to the internet.
And then it's a bit pixelated, and it's way more believable.
Absolutely. Like media literacy across the ages is obviously different. Even my parents aren't aware of a lot of this stuff, or at least they weren't until I started investigating it. I mean, my friend the other day got a text and it said, "Hi, Mum. This is your son. I'm texting you off a friend's phone because mine's broken. Can you give this number a call?" Obviously, probably going to say, "Transfer me some money."
Yeah.
But imagine if it wasn't just a text; it was a phone call, which replicated
your
voice perfectly, or
it's
at
like
least well
Terminator,
enough. Right? Yeah.
Terminator 2.
I mean, I don't know if Terminator's mum is going to be.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do the voice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about the image. So to do the image, actually, how much can they build an image of me from a load of photos of me, or where did they get the initial building blocks?
Right, so you guys as kind of public figures are, obviously easier targets, right? Because there's a lot of videos of you out there that you can cut up into still images. There will be probably quite good quality audio of you if people want to target your voice.
Yeah.
So public figures are more at risk of higher quality attacks, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But again, it's requiring less data to generate good outputs, and the tools are becoming more accessible. So people may target you to, maybe scam one of your fans or something potentially.
Yeah.
But it's not just, public figures and famous people who are now being targeted. It's becoming a slightly more widespread problem for everyday people too.
So as the technology evolves, a couple of photos off your Instagram will probably be enough to make a decent deepfake.
I couldn't give you a timeline as to when, and it's always dangerous to give predictions. But yes, I think even right now, with a couple of images, you can generate some kind of avatars of people moving their heads, smiling. There was a tool called Deep Nostalgia, which allowed people to take photos of deceased relatives and then upload them onto this tool. And then it animated the face, made them smile, made them kind of raise their eyebrows and stuff. And a lot of people had a really emotional reaction to this because they could see their deceased parent or even someone they'd never met, like someone from the 1800s, looking and kind of moving their head and bringing a sense of presence and life, which is, I guess, one of the nicer examples of how the technology can work. But yes, that was only requiring one image. So yeah, it may be the case that soon doesn't take more than a few to get something.
And how do they do the voice?
How do they do the voice? So it would be a similar process of training an algorithm based on a sample of data of original voice audio. And then the algorithm processes it. The problem with these algorithms is we don't really know. It's kind of what we call like a black box in artificial intelligence. We can feed it data and kind of see the patterns of what it can generate and what works, what doesn't, but we don't really know how it works, what's going on under the bonnet, so to speak. But you might have seen, for example, text-to-speech tools, right? You can type in something and then it will generate it in a robotic voice.
Yeah.
So
I love doing that to him.
Right. Well, you guys could probably pretty easily make some versions of those for each other, and I'm sure you could have some fun with it.
Wait. So if I got enough clips of Smacks talking, I could type things in and it would come out in his voice.
If you found the right person who knew how to get these algorithms tuned and trained, yes, you could.
But that software is going to get more and more user-friendly as time goes on.
It absolutely is, and it already is. So there are people online now who are effectively crowdsourcing models. So there's a website where you can go on and it will have a list of all of these different models that people have trained on voices and shared. So
When you say model, you mean...
artificial, like an algorithm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there are people on there who have done SpongeBob SquarePants. They've done, Doctor Who as Matt Smith. They've done all of these different characters. And so the technology is what we call, this specific model is what we call open source.
Yeah.
Which is a format in artificial intelligence and programming where it's freely available, open to edit, share, advance. And the idea is it's collaborative.
Johnny, you could be hosting a radio show with like just you and then my deepfake of my voice.
And then Johnny would get a day off.
Yeah. Right. There you go. That might be a strategy for when
we'll probably edit that out in case our boss hears it.
Yeah.
We don't want to tell him, we just want to get the days off.
And then you coming from a philosophy background, you surely are thinking, at what stage does this get regulated?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it illegal?
So there's a lot of grey areas.
Yeah.
And this is why I was initially really interested in the technology, because I saw it being used in this explicitly malicious way with this pornographic use.
Just for the stats, is it 97% of all deepfake videos on the internet are porn?
So the study I did in 2019 was 96% at the time were this non-consensual form of image abuse against women. Yeah, which was...
Come on, really humanity.
Come on.
Really bleak. But we have seen, some more positive uses emerge since then. But yeah, I think where I come at it from is that, as I was saying earlier, these technologies are very disruptive, right? And the systems that we have are not particularly well set up for moving with rapid technological change. So there are some key things around synthetic media and deepfakes that I think are really interesting to kind of think about. One is consent. So, if you were to clone... Yeah. If you were to clone Smack's voice and you wanted a day off to catch up on, I don't know.
I would definitely give my consent.
You would definitely give your consent.
Right. He's at home watching EastEnders, just
thrilled, delighted,
chilling.
But if your producers were like, oh god, I'm sick of these guys, we're getting rid of them, and we're just going to have Robo Johnnies now. Obviously, you would want to have rights to your voice, rights to them to be commercially applied and used.
Yes.
And you'd want to consent to the specific uses.
You don't want them saying like a load of outrageous shit. Like,
absolutely.
We do that ourselves. But definitely don't want the robots to.
Yeah, there you go. So consent, even if it's just a bit of fun, like if your friend swaps your face into Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic, like, is that okay? Where do you draw the line around what is kind of consensual or not? Also really interesting when it comes to what we call synthetic resurrection, which is kind of bringing back deceased actors by voice or by face or things like this, where they've not explicitly said, I do or do not want this to happen. Then it falls to their estate to say, well, we will give permission for our relatives' likeness to be used in this way.
Because isn't like there a hologram of Tupac doing gigs?
Right, yeah, absolutely. So yes, there is. And there was also a very controversial case recently where Anthony Bourdain, the US chef who sadly committed suicide, his voice was cloned for a documentary with consent from the family, but it was in a way that was quite controversial because it was him reading an email he'd written, but it was clearly trying to make it seem like there was, some kind of thoughts of suicidal tendencies to begin with, and they didn't disclose it to the audience, so they didn't tell the audience that there was synthetic voice. Yeah, exactly. So that's another key area, right? Disclosure. When do you tell an audience?
Well, that documentary, was it like half made and then he died or something, or it's a collection of stuff?
No, so I think it was. I may be wrong, so please fact check me if I am. If I understand correctly, I think it was commissioned after his death as a kind of almost like a biopic of
and
his
people will
life.
know Anthony Bourdain. He's got a lot of series on Netflix and stuff. The chef,
but it's also misleading to the audience in that how in a few years' time, when this becomes more common, do audiences decipher what's real and what's not real?
Absolutely. And it's going to become increasingly difficult. But I think then it's also worth thinking, deepfakes have made us really worry about, what can we believe? Is it what's real anymore?
Yeah.
But actually, when we think about it, the world we live in already is really synthetic, right? True. Social media, Instagram filters, editing, airbrushing photos. any piece of advertising or fashion, photography, or anything like this that you see in a commercial context will have been edited heavily. Even things like documentaries, which you think of as factual, there's a lot of clever editing techniques and tricks. Even this podcast, right? There will be subtle cuts, I'm sure, in the final product. Right. And so it may seem like a normal, smooth flowing conversation, but I can assure your audience this is all a train wreck, right?
Yeah, you've seen behind the curtain now.
Yeah. So we already live in a world where there's a lot of kind of what you can kindly call, I guess, movie magic, right? The smoothing of media. And so it's only going to become more so. But I think it really makes me at least reflect again on what does authenticity mean in the digital age, right? What does that mean, and how is artificial intelligence specifically changing our relationship to authenticity?
It's just easier and easier to not believe the news then.
I'd like to. This is the thing. So there's a lot of concern. There's a lot of panic around deepfakes, and some of that is obviously warranted. The stuff around the image abuse against women is a real problem right now. And to your question earlier about legal stuff, countries around the world are putting in legislation to criminalize specifically that problem, which is good, and to protect women, which is obviously critical.
100%.
So, there's a lot of concern, but we've seen this now for 5 years where people are saying at every single major political event, particularly in the US, this is going to be the election that it comes and causes all these problems. And we can't trust anything anymore. And I would say, we're not quite there yet. I think it's good to be vigilant, right? It's good to kind of be aware that this technology is out there. But I think, if you're seeing something from the BBC or from RT, then you can probably assume that there's good fact checkers working on that production. There are journalists with real integrity doing that work. But obviously, again, the more prominent it becomes, the more realistic it becomes, it will become harder for those fact checkers perhaps to make definitive claims about what is real and what is not. So it is worrying, but I think this is why we need to prepare. This is why we need to do podcasts like this, right? To help your audience understand where the technology is going, and improve that media literacy around what is inevitably going to become more prominent in our day-to-day lives.
It's definitely going to be loads of like, someone gets caught doing something, we're like, that's a deep fake.
So actually, it's funny you mentioned that. That's actually probably one of the biggest problems we've seen around deepfakes, is not so much actually real deepfakes being used to make fake things look real, but the plausible deniability that the idea provides to dismiss real things as fake. And we have seen that around the world in political contexts.
Incredible,
I think it was Rudy Giuliani was recently saying that he'd been deepfaked, and a statement he made wasn't from him. One of the rioters at the US, January 6th riots at the Capitol, his lawyer was claiming that there was no way that I think the prosecution could prove that this was real footage. Trump's infamous grab them by the tape. He's also said that wasn't me. So as soon,
really, has he?
Yeah.
It's incredible, isn't it?
He says a lot of things, right?
Can I ask? We had an incident earlier in the year where Johnny got catfished.
Right, I've heard of this.
So and obviously, like when it came to head, one of the reasons how we figured it out was we tried to video call, and then the person on the other end was like, "Oh no, I can't do video call or whatever." Will we be in a position in a few years where catfishing's going on? You're like, "Oh, I'm skeptical." Then you video call, and it's like, "Hey, how are you?" So, oh well, there you go. I'm looking at the person; they're definitely real. They're talking back to me. Yeah,
good question. So I think maybe a couple of years is a bit too soon. But
thank God.
Your new catfish will still be bad on video calls. So the technologies do exist for what's called kind of facial reenactment, which is when you can essentially puppeteer someone else's face in real time using your facial movements. And this technology is pretty good when the models have been very well trained. But it's not particularly accessible, and again, that training takes a lot of time.
Thankfully, it's not readily available.
Not quite yet, but there have been reported cases, and I can't confirm these, but there have been reported cases, particularly in the cryptocurrency space, which is a bit of a wild west when it comes to scams and impersonation of people using deepfakes, which may well be, like I described earlier, these photo animating ones, to impersonate CEOs of crypto companies on calls. I don't know if that's actually the case. It may be a slightly cruder form of media manipulation, but again, it shows the intent, right? It shows that people are looking to do this, and it's just a matter of time. When it comes to scams and social engineering, it's about resources, right? It's like, what is the cheapest, most efficient way? It's like the Nigerian prince thing.
Email that goes around.
Right, right. That's a filter, right? Because they're not expecting the discerning reader to fall for it, but it's a filter that if you do fall for an email back, they're like, well, great, this is selective.
You're gullible.
Yeah, exactly.
There's been a couple of ones with big resources. Like there was the Russian film where they used Bruce Willis's lookalike.
Yeah, so what happened was there was a Russian telecoms company who licensed Bruce Willis's face
He gave
for an
permission.
advert. So it's become a little bit unclear in recent times. So I think my understanding is, yes, they got permission for this one advert.
And Bruce Willis got a few pound out of it.
I would imagine so. And obviously, the important context here, right, is that Bruce Willis has now got this degenerative condition which affects his ability to speak.
Yeah.
So he's probably thinking, how can I secure my future for me and my family, right? And so selling or licensing your face in that way becomes a potentially a commercially astute strategy, right? But there was then a story that he had sold the whole license to his face to a company who did this work, a company called Deepfakes. And then he came out and denied that he had sold the rights entirely. But yes, there were these adverts in Russia of Bruce Willis as John McClane, kind of character. I think not officially. But
did he look like modern day Bruce Willis or Bruce Willis from Die Hard in the 90s?
That's a great question. I think probably slightly older.
Okay.
I can't say I was studying it that intensely when I was watching it. But it wasn't the most convincing video I've ever seen.
And how was the voice?
So I don't know if, again, I can't recall. I don't think there was
he speaking
voice.
Russian?
I don't.
Surely dubbed his voice.
Yes.
Yeah,
The voice would have been dubbed, or it would have been the original actor. I think it was. The call was probably a bald guy, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but again, voice is getting to the point now where it's possible that you could get potentially Bruce Willis speaking Russian.
Isn't it crazy that we could be in a world where, like, Leonardo DiCaprio licenses his face and then he's on Fair City?
Yeah, he's on like.
You know what I mean? Like, obviously, they're not going to be able to afford it probably. Like, but
that's amazing.
that could be the world we live in. Like.
And hyper-localized stuff as well. I mean, on that note, there's some really interesting adverts that have come out. One involving Lionel Messi, footballer, for Lays or Walkers in England. But I think you guys have Lays. You call it Lays? The crisps?
Oh, so it's Walkers here. Yeah,
there's Walkers here too.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah.
So for this campaign, they did what they called messy messages, which is they got Messi to film himself, kind of doing almost like a selfie style FaceTime call, I guess. And this company that do some really incredible work called Synthesia used, again, artificial intelligence to make it so that you can get custom messages from Messi. So you put in your name, you'd put in your friend's name, you'd put in maybe where you live, and then you'd get this message from Messi in his voice, which was personalized.
Oh my God, we need that.
So they were able to generate the missing pieces from all their collected.
Yeah, a little bit, exactly. So it's kind of like a bit like fill in the blanks, right? So they have a script. It's not entirely unique for each person, but it's kind of, they will have generated a certain amount of names and places and things like this that you can then type in or select, and then get your own messy message. And a similar campaign was done in India with Cadbury's with a famous Bollywood actor.
I'd love to see how, like, is it like, hey, I'm Lionel Messi and hello to Siobhan and Martin.
So it wasn't too bad. It wasn't so robotic.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't as natural as, if he was doing it for real. But it was still pretty good.
That's incredible, isn't it? Last question. In the short to medium term, because our listeners are going to be they're probably like going, oh my God, brains are about to explode. In the short to medium term, what can they expect from this area of deepfakes? What do you perceive is going to happen in the next few years?
Sure. So I think we're going to see much, much more in the way of these open tools that anyone can access for creating probably fun and novelty content.
Yeah.
Swapping your face into films, maybe cloning your voice in a somewhat believable way.
Yeah.
Being able to generate images of things by just typing in a text prompt. I mean, that's been a big thing over the last 6 months, is these models that you can type in any text and it will generate an image of what you've just typed in.
Wow.
Which is incredible. So much more accessible tools.
Yeah.
I think we're also seeing the kind of commercial maturation of the technology. So we're seeing more and more companies starting to use this, license this as a way to legitimately enhance communication, the entertainment industry, gaming, all of these different things. But unfortunately, as the tools become more accessible, as awareness grows, I think we'll then also see malicious uses growing at the same time. And we need to be, as a society, very vigilant, particularly against women and minority groups who are more likely to be victims, to kind of make sure that everyone understands what is and is not a legitimate use, and that we do try and put some legislation in place to set the tone and hopefully push back on those malicious uses.
Henry, we could chat to you for hours, man. Thanks a million for your time. It's really interesting.
Yeah,
Cheers.
I'm
My
never going to
pleasure.
sleep again.
He's never going to sleep again. For more on Science Week, see www.scienceweek.ie or check them out on their various social media channels.